Hello everyone, welcome to Mastermind. In this video, we'll be discussing part 4 of fundamental rights. In the third part, we have discussed Article 15 till the exceptions. In this part, we have to be discussing two most important amendments. One is 93rd Constitution Amendment Act of 2005. Second one is 103rd Constitutional Amendment Act of 2019. 103rd Constitutional Amendment Act of 2019. So this 93rd Constitutional Amendment Act, this is related to the exceptions. That is, this is related to reservation for OBCs. In this, particularly, we'll be discussing about the concept of creamy layer. In case of 103rd Constitutional Amendment Act, we'll be looking at a reservation for economically weaker sections. So both of these are different, economically weaker sections. So in this, we will be seeing about the 10% reservation which is given to economically weaker sections. In this, we'll be seeing that 27% reservation is given to OBCs in education institution. After that, we'll be looking at the creamy layers. In this, we'll be looking at the 10% reservation for the economically weaker section we'll be looking at. So let us start with the reservation for OBCs in education institutions. Now, with respect to reservation for OBCs in educational institutions, we have to discuss one amendment, which is 93rd Constitutional Amendment Act. When did it come? It was in 2005. 93rd Constitutional Amendment Act 2005. This is speaking about exception only. Now, whenever we are reading fundamental rights or there are directive principles of state policy or fundamental duties, whenever you are reading about these articles, please make sure that you are revising the exceptions again and again, because mostly the questions will come from the exceptions itself. Now, this is related to the exceptions which is given to advancement of socially and educationally backward classes of citizens, which we saw in that they can make special provisions in educational institutions. Correct? Educational institutions. So this was the third exception. So the first exception was related to women and children. Second was related to special provisions, that is reservation of seats and fee concession in public education institutions. Third one was related to advancement in case of admission to educational institutions. So this exception itself was added by 93rd Constitutional Amendment Act of 2005. 93rd Constitutional Amendment Act of 2005. So this amendment was made. Now, they bought the amendment, but to make it effective, they have to bring an act also, right? So the state enacted Central Educational Institutions Reservation in Admission. Central Educational Institutions Reservation in Admission Act of 2006. Now we have to remember that they have already bought an amendment. To bring an effect to that amendment, there has to be an act. So the state bought an act saying that Central Education Institutions Reservation in Admission Act 2006. This provided for 27% reservation for candidates of other backward classes. 27% reservation for candidates belonging to other backward classes in all central higher education institutions. That is, even if it is IITs or IIMs. In higher education institutions, the reservation was provided to OBCs, including IITs and IIMs. Okay, so this act came in place in 2006, which provided 27% reservation to the students of OBCs in higher education institutions of center. Now, when this reservation was made, then people went to the court. So, Supreme Court in 2008 upheld the reservation. That is, Supreme Court said that it is alright, it is correct only. So, they upheld the validity of both this Constitutional Amendment Act also, they upheld this OBC Quota Act also. But the court directed to exclude creamy layer, concept of creamy layer. Now, what is creamy layer? Now, in this concept, for example, in ice creams or in the drinks, etc., you see that there will be cream on top, correct? There will be cream on top. So, in the sense of creamy layer, it means that in this particular category, or let us say consider this as OBC, in this particular category, there are children of the people who are way well off, that is, they do not need reservation. So they gave a concept of creamy layer, that is, for these people, even though they belong to OBCs, they should not be getting the reservation among the OBCs, that is, they will not be getting the quota benefits. Now, what are the creamy layers? It has to be defined also, right? So if there is a person who is holding constitutional post, so these are from OBCs only. So if that person is holding constitutional post, for example, they are president, vice president, or judge of Supreme Court or High Court, or chairman or member of UPSC or SPSC, etc., their children are not eligible for the reservation. They are not eligible for the reservation. This is the first one. In the second one, if they are holding Group A or Class 1 and Group C, Group B or Class 2 officers of All India Central and State Services and employees holding equivalent position in PSUs, banks, insurance organizations, etc., in the private employment also, they are not eligible for OBCs because they come under creamy layer. In other words, it means that the reservation has to not be provided for these, it has to be provided except for these if they are belonging to that category. In the third one, they said that if there are professionals like doctors or lawyers or engineers or artists, etc., their children should not be given the reservation. And the fourth one, in the third one, it was related to ranks of colonial and above the rank of army and equivalent. And in the fourth one, it is related to professionals like doctors, lawyers, engineers, artists, authors, consultants, etc. And in the fifth exception, it says that persons who are engaged in trade, business and industry. Sixth one, it is saying that people holding agricultural land above certain limit and vacant land or building in urban areas. And the seventh one, if a person is having gross annual income of more than 8 lakh, more than 8 lakh, this is annual income, right? Or wealth above exception limit, they cannot claim the reservation. Now, in the case of this one, that is 8 lakh or wealth or a possession of wealth above certain limit, in 1993, the creamy layer ceiling itself, in 1993, the ceiling itself was 1 lakh. That is, if a person is holding, if he is getting an annual income of more than 1 lakh or more than 1 lakh, then their kids are included in the creamy layer. But in 1993, when this ceiling was introduced, it was 1 lakh. Now, then it was made in 2004, the ceiling was increased to 2.5 lakh. And in 2008, the ceiling was increased to 4.5 lakh. And in 2013, the ceiling was increased to 6 lakh. And in 2017, the ceiling was increased to 8 lakh. So the latest ceiling is 8 lakhs. So these are the creamy layers. In other words, you have to understand that the concept of creamy layers is a exception. These are not included in the reservation which has to be provided for the state, and the children of the following different category of people are treated to be in the creamy layer. So I hope you have understood about reservation for OBCs in the educational institutions. Reservation of OBCs in the educational institutions. Next one, let us look at reservation for economically weaker sections in educational institutions. In this, we have to be looking at 103rd Constitutional Amendment Act of 2019. 103rd Constitutional Amendment Act of 2019. That is, we have seen that 93rd Constitutional Amendment Act of 2005. To enact that, we got Central Educational Institutions Reservation in Admission Act 2006. Now, in case of 103rd Constitutional Amendment Act, in order to give effect to this provision, the central government issued an order in 2019. An order in 2019. That order said that there needs to be 10% reservation. 10% reservation in economically weaker sections in admission to education institutions. In admission to educational institutions. Now, the benefit of this reservation should be availed by the persons belonging to economically weaker sections. Now, we have to understand who will constitute economically weaker sections, correct? Because in the previous exceptions only, we have seen that there are a lot of exceptions. That is, in the first exceptions, we have seen that there are women and children who are included. And in the second and third exceptions, we have seen for the advancement of socially and educationally backward classes of citizens and scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. And for there also, we have seen that there can be reservation. And in the fourth exceptions, we have seen that economically weaker sections. But who will be these economically weaker sections? So, in the Constitution, it is said that in this amendment only, they are saying that who are not included under the existing schemes of reservation, existing SCs or STs and OBCs, whoever are not included in this, they can avail the reservation of 10% under economically weaker sections. Now, if you are excluding SCs, STs and OBCs, then can everyone else get this economically weaker section eligibility criteria? No, in this regard, the eligibility criteria itself is given. Now, what are the eligibility criteria? That we will look in 4 parts. There are 4 eligibility criteria. First one itself, the exception, it is saying that whoever is not included in SCs, STs and OBCs can avail reservation under economically weaker sections. But who can avail? That is given over here. Persons whose family has gross annual income below rupees 8 lakh. Gross annual income below rupees 8 lakh are identified as economically weaker section for the benefit of reservation. Now, this 8 lakh, this income would include income from all the sources. That is, if they are getting the income from salary, from agriculture, from business, from profession, etc. So all those sources are seen and taken into consideration for the financial year. So in that financial year, if considering all the incomes, it is crossing 8 lakhs, then they are ineligible. But if it is under 8 lakhs, they are eligible. So this is the first condition. Second one, person whose family owns or possesses any of the following assets. So the first one, it is saying about the annual income. Second one, it is saying assets. So if they are having any of the following assets, irrespective of the family income, they are ineligible. First one, if they are having 5 acres of agricultural land and above, 5 acres or above, they are ineligible. Second one, if they are having residential flat of 1000 square feet and above, they are ineligible. Third condition, if they are having residential plot, it is not saying about flat, it is saying about plot of 100 square yards, okay, in municipalities, that is in the urban areas, then they are not ineligible. If they are having residential plot of 200 square yards in case of rural areas, in case of or above, in the above areas which are notified in municipalities, other than notified municipalities, that is other than municipalities, that is you consider it as rural areas only, then 200 square yards or above, then they are ineligible. So in the first condition they mentioned about the income, in the second condition they are mentioning about the assets. In the third condition they are saying that if about the property, that is the property held by the family in different locations or different places or cities, if all properties are clubbed, remember all properties are clubbed together while applying for the land or property, then holding the test, if it is determining their economically weaker section status, then they are ineligible. Then they are ineligible. Eligibility criteria itself is if it is inside this limit and if it is outside this limit. So the property held by the family in different locations or different places or cities would be clubbed while applying for the land or property holding test, that is related to assets test. If they are having different properties in different areas, then all of them are clubbed in order to look at the asset tests, and if they are coming above 5 acres, they are ineligible. If all of them are clubbed and it is below 5 acres, they are eligible. I hope you have understood. Next one, they are talking about family for this purpose would include the person who seeks benefit for reservation, his or her parents and siblings below the age of 18 years, as also his or her spouse and children below the age of 18 years. That is, for all this purpose, the family for this purpose would include the person who is wanting the benefit of reservation. It includes all the parents and siblings below the age of 18 years and his or her spouse and children below the age of 18 years. They are eligible. So these are the criteria which are mentioned for the reservation of economically weaker sections in education institutions. So you have to remember that there is 10% reservation, and excluding SCs, STs and OBCs, they can claim for these conditions, according to these conditions. So if they are having below 8 lakhs, they are eligible, and assets, properties, and who can avail these benefits also has been given in this particular reservation of economically weaker sections in education institutions. So Article 93 was related to OBCs. Article 103, 10 articles more, is related to economically weaker sections. Okay, I hope you have understood about these. So part 3 and part 4 of fundamental rights together will wind up our Article 15, that is prohibition of discrimination on certain grounds. So I hope you have understood this article completely. We needed this much time to discuss this particular article because of the exceptions which are there. In order to understand that article, gist of that article, it will take 2 to 3 minutes. But in order to understand what are the exceptions, and in exceptions are also what are the amendments and who are properly exempted, to understand that we had to take this much time. So I hope you have understood about Article 15. At the end of this e-paper, there are a few multiple choice questions for you to answer. You can attempt those. Thank you. I'll see you soon in the next one.